motto is be bold for Christ. And I'm going to ask the question, how can we be bold for Christ? Well, I propose two strategies. The first one is asking the right questions at the right time. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. The second is what I call planned evangelism by intent. And I'll focus on both of those. Jesus did this a lot. Ask questions. The rich young ruler, the encounter with the rich young ruler. The rich young ruler comes to him and says, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus first addresses, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone." Then he says, "You know the commandments, right? Don't steal, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't give false witness, honor your father and mother." And the young man just comes right back and says, "All these I have kept from my youth." Jesus looks at him. I think he probably smiled and said, "Yeah, you lack one thing. Sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and follow me." What Jesus was doing here was asking a question. Are you willing to give up your wealth to follow me? The young man could not. So the question, the strategy of asking questions is one that works. Jesus used it a lot to make himself known. I'll give you a little story. Black woman, Hispanic man, an Anglo-Saxon blonde. All applied for the same job. Through the course of the job interview, the job interviewer had one last question. How many D's in Indiana Jones? So, the black woman responded, 1. He said, "That's correct, thank you." The Hispanic man said, 1, that's correct. The blonde says, "Give me a calculator." 32. He says, "Now, how did you get 32? She said, "Let's see. Da 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 da." I lived in Greenville, South Carolina for a while. And I can tell you, having lived there, shirt collar evangelism doesn't work. You grab by the collars and shout the gospel in their face, okay? That was very common in that city, and it doesn't work. Because men are dead in their sin. They can't hear you. God has to work first. We can work in the mind and the emotions. We can't work in the will. That's beyond us, okay? The will response has to come from the heart, and that's something God has to change. So I believe evangelism, when it comes to questions, is one of the ways we can get there. Let me give you an illustration. I worked for SEBA for almost, 26 years, 28 years. And during that time, I worked with a fellow who was a certified humanist. That was his religious persuasion. He made that well known. As when I was converted, during the time I worked at SEBA, the change was very dramatic. In fact, the guys I used to eat lunch would come and say, "New Charlie or old Charlie?" Okay? Because that old beer drinking, Playboy reading, swearing guy died. He was gone. And when Charlie came back to Greenville, South Carolina after 3 years, it was a new person, and they recognized that. Anyway, Ed was a good friend of mine. We ate lunch together quite a bit. And I would, roll questions into his office, like a bowling ball, okay? I would just ask him a question and walk away. Spiritual questions. Questions that related to the reality of the gospel. Finally, I walked in one day and I asked him something about someone had died. I asked him, "Where's that person now?" He turned around in extreme anger and said, "Liebert, get the hell out of my office and don't you dare ever come in here and ask a question again." Well, I guess I hit the nerve. Okay, I hit that spiritual nerve. I don't know what happened as a result of that, but I hit the nerve. Let me give you a couple of examples. And I'm getting now to evangelism by intent. I plan my strategy to deal with certain kinds of people. I think it through. I've worked it out. To some extent, not that I'm going to be successful. I have dialogues with atheists quite frequently. Particularly through my website, okay? They come thinking this Christian sucker is just going to get sucked right in, okay? Of course, they don't know that my hardcore belief, until I was 35, was atheism. So I had the other side, and I understand their thought process. So you start like this. You believe the universe contains absolutes? Well, of course, an atheist is going to say, "Well, certainly does not. How can it?" is no God in absolute? Whoops. A little processing begins in the brain. Then you say, the best you can be is agnostic. Can't know, don't know, won't know. Because you can't be an atheist because you believe there's no absolutes. You have a problem. Your religious understanding is a contradiction. Oh, that gets it, man. But you know, God is going to use that mental process. Or, let me give you another illustration. I use this one in my class quite a bit. This guy's a professional art thief. That's what he does. He makes millions of dollars stealing art and selling it. You steal his wallet, what's the first thing he says? Hey, that's wrong. You can't do that. Wait a minute. Look at the contradiction. It's obvious. Another illustration. You know I teach at Davidson County Community College. I teach business law. And as a semester begins, I do a series of introductory things in the class, little activities and stuff. And it allows me, by observing the students pretty closely, to identify those that are believers. God usually gives me 3 or 4. This class I have 4 or 5 this time. It's interesting. In a class of 20, I've got almost 4 or 5 believers. And I mean rock solid believers that really understand the gospel. And what I'll tell them privately is, look, during the course of the semester, I'm going to ask questions in this class. I can't give answers to some of them. I'd love to give the gospel, but that's not my place. I can't do that. However, you can. Peer-to-peer is perfectly legitimate. I did that about 3 semesters ago, and the young lady that I talked to aside just told her that was a possibility. She got up and gave a 4-minute diatribe about the Bible and marriage when we're in the issue of common law. That literally blew the class away. Now, I couldn't do that, but I planted the seed to do it. That's evangelism by intent. Jehovah's Witnesses, they come to the door, right? Ding dong, there's the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society right in their hand, right? Question. Does your organization make prophecies? Yeah, I'm very proud of that, actually. In whose name? Well, the organization's name is Jehovah's Witnesses. Obviously, it's the name of Jehovah. So you're prophesying in God's name. Does anything you prophesy ever not come true? They think about it for a minute and they start to deny it, and then they process a little more, and they usually say, yeah, maybe something didn't come exactly true. Open your purple people leader. Their Bible's usually purple. Open it to Deuteronomy 20 to 22. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. If you say in your heart, we know the word which the Lord has spoken, when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that's the thing the Lord has not spoken, but the prophet spoken presumptuously, you do not be afraid of it. If we're in Old Testament times, I'd take you out and stone you. A prophet has to be 100% right. Mormons, great example. The Book of Mormon teaches a whole lot of stuff that's not in the Bible. Galatians 1, 6 to 8. I marvel you're turning away so soon from him who called you in the grace of Christ to a different gospel, which was not another. But there are some who trouble you and want to pervert the gospel of Christ. But though we, or an angel from heaven, preach any other gospel to you than that which is preached to you, Paul's talking about the scriptures, let him be accursed. So in each case, it was intent. When the Jehovah's Witnesses come down my block, they skip my house. Yeah. Guys do. They skip it. I'm on that list that says, don't you dare go there. That guy is going to derail you. Because I've had them come, and I can actually see the leader, which is the one that's silent, starting to panic when the other person's starting to process what I'm telling them. Because that's evangelism by intent. So, what do? We arm ourselves with questions. We arm ourselves with plans to address particular issues or individuals, so you can be ready to be bold. Thank you.